Welcome back to Just You and Me. I'm Donna.
And I am Adam. Donna, how's it going?
It's good. We're in studio and we're actually in the same room.
I know. I didn't allow you to touch me. I mean, that's a little weird. I didn't
Okay.
go that close.
Let's cut that part out where I touched my co-host.
No, we can keep that in so there's evidence.
Oh,
You
okay.
can't get rid of it.
Okay. Well, my husband's in the room, so
Right.
I'm not feeling very uncomfortable now. So,
okay. Well, speaking of in the room.
Yes.
We have a very special guest today, which is one of the reasons we are in studio. We have joining us someone named Howard Gordon, and Howard Gordon is the most important thing about Howard Gordon is he is my cousin.
Oh, that's number one.
That's number one, first and foremost. And I get my good looks from him.
Oh, okay.
So we're cousins, but secondly, Howard Gordon is a writer, producer, probably a little bit of everything else within the television industry. He's been a big part of the industry for about 4 decades, I believe, working
and then some.
Working on some great stuff. Started, I believe, Beauty and the Beast. I think that was the first one.
Well, Spencer for Hire.
Okay, that's right.
Were you born then?
No, probably not.
But Beauty and the Beast was the second one.
Yes, and then he worked on X-Files. He's worked on 24, which we can recount some of our dealings together because I worked on 24 with you for a little bit.
I remember that time. I remember that era of Adam when you worked.
A weird era. That was single Adam too, by the way.
Single pre-business school Adam.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
What am I going to do, Adam?
And other great things like Homeland.
Oh my God.
Tyrant.
Oh my God.
What else am I missing? Oh,
The Beast in Me.
The Beast in Me.
Which, by the way, Lance and I just finished a couple weeks ago, and we were like, I just want to talk to you about Claire Danes' chin, but the whole, the shaking.
You and I know, yeah.
But that was an amazing show.
Thank you.
Everything you do is phenomenal because I think 24 was the first show that it was like appointment TV that I can remember as an adult. We had parties every single Monday night. It was Mondays, right?
Yeah, Monday.
And I was just obsessed with that show. And Homeland. Oh my God, Homeland.
Yeah.
You're behind some of the best shows.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. And
it's good to be here.
It's great to have you here because especially on a podcast called Just You and Me, there's so much I think that goes into your writing and your history and kind of the things that you do within the TV industry. And we'll get into that. But it's amazing to have you here. We've gone back a long way. I remember
your bar mitzvah.
Yes, and I was actually going to bring that up. I was going to bring that up because he gave me one of the best gifts you could ever give a 13-year-old boy.
What?
That sounded like it was not
promising,
pornography.
But it's not that.
It was not pornography.
He doesn't remember.
You don't. And
what was it?
1993 pornography, not good pornography.
Okay.
Lance knows what I'm talking about. No, he gave me a original copy of X-Men #4.
Oh, I do remember.
And this was like the first appearance of the Scarlet Witch and a couple of other like ridiculous characters. And it was #1. It was #4. And I framed it. I got it graded. It is like in the vault.
It's a comic book?
Yes.
I thought maybe I don't know.
It's a comic book?
I'm not.
What do you think it was?
I'm not the 13-year-old boy.
It's true. It's true.
So that was your gift.
That was my gift.
It was amazing.
And you really remember that?
No, I actually do. Now I do. Now that you remind me, I'm not. I would tell you because there are plenty of things I do not remember.
Got it.
That's not one. Now I remember.
How are you related? Through who?
Yes, this is the weird. You gotta go into this one because you probably know a little bit
better.
Well,
I do know it because it's sort of 2 different ways. My mother's father married boy, it really is pretty complicated.
I know.
Married his cousin, who was herself was a survivor.
Okay.
After a bunch of survivors of the camps from Eastern Europe came here, my grandfather was a cousin of that part of the family, and so after my biological grandmother died, he married what was a pretty close cousin, and that is she was related to your mom, first cousins with your grandmother Rose.
Yeah, on my dad's side. On my dad's side. Yes.
So your dad is my mother's second cousin.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or third cousin.
We actually,
yeah.
And we actually had like a big kind of family reunion as much as we could and put together an entire tree.
A big family reunion for a very small family.
Correct.
Family. I mean,
It's
which is
very true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
It's really very much a family of, I hate to say, but remnants.
Yeah.
Who reconstituted. So it was a very, very meaningful,
That's great. Where were you born?
New York.
So you're also East Coast.
I'm East Coast.
Nice. Where? Just
well, I was born in Queens. I don't know if you know, but then I grew up in Long Island.
Where'd your
Long Island?
Like not as well as I should probably.
Where your parents were born?
My mother was born in Brooklyn. My father in the Bronx.
Okay, and then their parents were born,
Hungary, Russia,
and then they came over. What year did they come through Ellis Island? Same type of.
I think my grandmother, who's steerage I have, from I think it was 1913.
Wow.
1913.
Yeah, she was born 1895, and she was a seamstress. I still have her sewing machine,
wow.
in the sweatshops, and brought over, however many people she could.
That's incredible.
Which I learned only after she died.
Oh, really?
Is my father's mother. Yeah, different side of the family.
Wow. It's unbelievable. I'm learning so much also about my past and my history and my ancestors after they're gone. Like, I wish I would have been smart enough to really want to learn.
But even still, it's funny. We have, at least, again, we have different branches of the family. Mine is particularly absent any family history. Like, we have no clue who we're from. We know what kind of, roughly from the Pale of Russia, but there were no extraordinary physicists, rabbis, not even, good merchants, mostly peasants. I mean, really, truly peasant stock. I have the most unspectacular lineage I've ever met. Like, I'm amazed when I've met people who have relatives who were, some did something. I don't know. We did nothing.
And you've gone through like a 23andMe situation, or no?
I didn't do 23andMe because I know the answer. I just I just on spec. I said, you know what? I don't really care. I mean, and I'm so not even paranoid. I tap my phones, invade my privacy. I'm just not really that. I'm on. My wife got it for me for a thing, and I said,
you didn't do it, huh?
I just didn't do it. I didn't open the shrink wrap.
Oh my gosh!
I did it.
And FYI, she has since scrubbed her name from it. Like, I guess there was a data breach of some sort.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, what do I need to know? I know that, I as far back as I go, if I thought there was a chance that I had even a 2% Italian or something, so I could claim Paisan or have fun. But I knew what the answer was before I took it.
So I did it, and I am 100% Ashkenazi.
Yeah, well, I could have told you.
I'm really not surprised.
I could have told you about swab. You could have spared the swab in your cheek.
And it was actually really funny because I was working at a Japanese company when that happened, and when I tested myself, and I came in, and Japanese people are so much different. There's so many different segments of all of Asia that make up their genetic DNA.
Amazing? It's amazing.
So when they saw that it was 100% of one group, they were so confused.
You're a purebred.
I'm the purest of the purebred.
Purest.
But it was so bizarre to be 100% when you're around people that were every part of Asia.
Inbred too.
That's what it is. We are inbred.
I actually didn't know that about Japanese people. Is it just Japanese people, or all Asian?
I think Asian community in general.
They all have different
ethnic.
Yes,
that's interesting. So you were born in New York, born in the Queens, whatever, raised in that area, and then
raised on Long Island, so very suburban, very much at the sort of in the '60s, suburban scene.
What'd your parents do?
My father was a dentist, and my mother was a school teacher, and then a guidance counselor.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And do you have siblings?
I have two younger brothers who are doctors.
No way.
And whose spouses, whose wives are also doctors. I thought I'd be a doctor too, because from where I am from, all one became was a doctor or a lawyer. I didn't know that there was anything other than being a doctor.
Wow, really?
I had a very narrow focus, but I just was a lousy. I was a very good writer. That's the only thing I was really good at. So,
and which obviously,
but I didn't think that's what you could actually do I didn't know that people could write for a living, but I wrote stories and poems since I was really small and was happy to be good at it. But even in college, I thought I was going to go to med school, and then I kind of failed organic chemistry, or I should say I didn't even get past the third week.
Yeah.
So I go, I'll be a lawyer. I slept through my LSAT. I kind of knew, and I kind of knew I was cornering myself into this, writing thing.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Princeton.
Okay.
Oh, wow. But were your parents at that point like a writer?
Without getting too into the sort of weeds of my familial trauma, my dad actually was disabled, had a stroke very young when I was young, and I think, they were, yeah. I mean, it was like, I think the one thing I do recall is my mother saying, "You go to med school and then you can write." You're right.
Yeah, do that for fun
Yeah,
later.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's your little hobby after that. So I took them. I was definitely the odd one,
The black sheep.
a little bit of black sheep, but I was also the firstborn. So I kind of had that kind of, dare to dream temperament.
Were you obsessed with TV?
Obsessed?
Yeah.
I mean, literally obsessed. It's interesting. I like the movies. I always say I like movies, but I loved TV.
So
part of it was from this deeply dysfunctional family where I was closer to the Brady Bunch and Captain Kirk than I was to.
Like you wanted to escape into the TV screen.
Literally, yes. It was on all the time.
Yeah.
So what was the era? Like, what shows were you watching that you were obsessed with that kind of got you into this?
I mean, I knew the schedule cold, my brothers and I. I mean, we literally would go through the TV guide at the beginning of the year, which was like the preview.
And highlight?
And highlight.
I did the same.
Schedule. Yeah, it was a big, a negotiation.
It was the best
Big
part of the week, going to the
part.
market for the TV
And what you're
guide.
saying is like this part of television was what was wonderful about it, which was that you said Mondays.
Right.
Mondays meant something. There are no Mondays anymore.
No, it was appointment.
That's so true.
It was appointment television, and it's something that my kids will never understand.
And it's really been lost, and it's something very big. It's a big problem, and I've been, vocal about it to no end. But
Yeah.
just,
I mean, even when you started writing, and even 2 decades into your writing.
No, only 10 years ago. It was roughly what it was for it. And it had been that way for, decades prior to my getting into the business. So it really was only even look, when we looked at things like during 24, DVDs and the idea of TiVo. Remember DVR?
I remember that.
So there was a time shifting idea, and that was disruptive, but that was actually that was like additive. This streaming thing blew everything open.
Interesting.
And, when tech came in, everything changed.
So okay, back to the era. What shows were you watching that kind of?
Look, I watched
it.
Everything from Roots to All in the Family, Star Trek, Twilight Zone, Room 222, Maude. I mean, just name one after the other. I mean, The Rifleman, I Love Lucy, Batman.
Oh my God.
All of it, Gilligan's Island.
And that's a lot of
Gilligan.
a lot of different genres there.
Yeah.
It's not just
You just like TV.
But that's
I just like TV.
But that's also when you were growing up.
Well, I also thought that there were shows like that really, when I thought there's something more than just, being close to Gilligan, I was it really kindled, I'd say, something in my mind. There was something about being connected to whether it was Spock or Kirk or Kunta Kinte on Roots. Like that was an event. Neither of you remember it, but it was a monumental thing in the culture that they aired Roots, Alex Haley's Roots in the 70s. The entire country, I don't know whether it was 30-40% of the country was tuned in.
That's insane.
To these events. So there was a cultural conversation happening that I thought was very impactful. And whereas in a movie, okay, there's Don Corleone, The Godfather, and he lives, but he doesn't live in the same kind of intimacy, let's say, that Tony Soprano does.
Yeah.
There's something about week to week and season to season that I found to be an incredibly intimate experience. And, it wasn't, I wanted to manipulate anybody, but that you are close to these characters in some ways closer than you are to the real people in your life.
Yeah.
Which can be problematic, I suppose, in one way. But for me, it felt like I want to do that. I want to be that person. I didn't know you could, though, but I did.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny. We grew up in different places and different decades, but I was the same. Obsessed. TV was on all the time. And
Where'd you grow up?
Here in LA.
Where, which part?
I was living in West Hollywood, but I went to the Beverly Hills School District.
Okay, gotcha.
But I was so obsessed with TV, and I only could do my homework with the TV on in the background. I would watch it all day Saturday. Like I would, anything from the Saved by the Bell to the Beverly Hills 90210. But I was, I ended up being a casting director for a few years.
Really?
Actually, that was my first career. But that's because I was probably like you, where I was so fascinated and I would scream at my mom if there was something filming on the street, which happened every day, all the time in those days, and have her drop me off just like, and she would. I was 10 years old and she would just drop me off on the street for hours. But I get it. Like when you're so fascinated, that's you're kind of one track mind. You think that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
So you kept writing at Princeton.
Well, and then I was, I was a novel. I wrote novels. I wrote a novel for my thesis, and I was I had a fellowship to NYU to get my master's of fine arts, and I decided I actually had a partner who was remains a friend, but named Alex Conza, who also was at Princeton and was a novelist as well. Who again was much less conversant in television than I was. He was a kind of a waspy kid from San Francisco who went to private I was a public school kid. He went to not only to boarding school but to Harrow. He was an Anglophile, but we bonded over Saul Bellow, interestingly, over a Jewish author.
Interesting.
No
And
way.
and both of us just loved. So I was a novelist and a would-be fiction writer, and I was going to go to NYU to do that. But I had this idea, and one night, probably over a bunch of beer and tequila, I said to Alex, you want to just let's defer our graduation because I have an idea. Let's do a movie or a miniseries about the life of Lord Byron. Again, exactly.
What?
Lord Byron.
Lord Byron, because we both were these English major geeks who had, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. It was probably just again, no one, of course, had any interest in telling anything about Lord Byron, but it kind of got us out here.
Oh my gosh.
Huh.
Yeah.
So you guys moved to LA.
Moved to LA together, and then we started an SAT preparation company that I had done at Princeton, and I sort of brought it out here. It's called Test Takers. And in our first group of teachers, and I think you know this, but like the Harvard Lampoon Mafia. So I call them the Harvard Lampoon Mafia. Like Greg Daniels, who went on to create, The Office and King of the Hill.
Wow.
Was one of my teachers, for instance, and all these people who were comedy writers they all went on to SNL. At the time, some of them, no one was working. I mean, we were 22 years old at the time, but these were my teachers. Like I should have opened an agency instead of an SAT preparation.
For real. So you were friends with all these different writers.
Yeah.
And they were teachers for your company.
Correct. And again, when I say company, I went from school to school and pitched the guidance counselors about this materials, and it was that or waiting tables, and we did that.
I mean, it's kind of genius.
But in the first clutch of students was the daughter of the executive producer of named John Wilder, who goes back to Peyton Place and The Rifleman, and he was actually he was a child actor. But he had a new show on the air called Spencer for Hire, which hadn't even aired yet, but he invited us Alex and me to go, and that was our first job.
He gave you a writing job?
Yeah, like how did that work?
Things were so much easier back then.
It really wasn't. It was like we had this. It was based on Robert Parker novels. Robert Parker kind of very it was a genre where everything was either a cop show, a lawyer show, a private eye show. There hasn't been one on since Spencer for Hire, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And we were invited to watch the pilot, which in those days you went to Warner Brothers and they all these writers showed up who by invitation, and you were invited to pitch ideas, kind of like Willy Loman schlepping your ideas into the room. You could make a living in those days being a freelance writer. So we went, watched the pilot, read all the Robert Parker books, and pitched. Not even to John. John was merely a kind of Wizard of Oz figure on the other side of the phone, inviting us, and he wasn't even in the pitch meeting. But there were these two people. We pitched our hearts out for four different ideas, stone-faced. John wasn't there. Alex, my waspy partner, ran to the elevator, like fast walked. I, Jew that I am, grabbed them by the lapel and go, "We can come back Monday." Whatever you're like, And Alex, the door is closed, and he goes, "I can't believe you just debased yourself like that." That was, and we proceeded. We went out and bought literally a bottle of vodka, drank all of it, passed out we were living in a studio in Venice, and we passed out literally unconscious on the beach in Venice until a cop kicked us, and we were sunburned. And we stumbled back because we thought we'd fuck. We had this door, it opened, and it wasn't that easy.
You ruined it,
and we ruined it. There was no opportunity. I got back, and there was a little, I'll never forget this, walking up the stairs of our crappy apartment in Venice and then seeing the red light blink and pressing the machine. And it was the voice of John Wilder, the Wizard of Oz, saying, I heard your ideas, and I think they're all terrific. And we didn't know which
Wow.
one, and they went with one, and that was the beginning.
So then you became staff writers on
We
the
weren't
show.
staff. We just did more freelance. We did about 5 or 6 freelance over the next 2 years.
And then you guys get an agent at that point?
We got
or?
an agent
Okay.
right on the heels of
So
that.
what year is this?
84, 85, 84.
Okay.
84 into 85.
Yeah. And so you just start working on a bunch of different projects.
So worked on that, did a couple of other unremarkable shows, The Wizard of Elm Street, which no one remembers, but the first one that had
we'll have to Google that one later.
Yeah, no, there was Houston Nights. Again, everything
Houston Nights.
That was a version of like Miami Vice, but it was in Houston.
But
Yeah.
who wanted to understand what Houston?
Houston has a very bustling
But out
life.
of all cities, Houston,
It's kind of random.
That's really parochial of you, Adam.
course
Houston's a
it is.
very
it's another flyover state, Howard. Come
That's
on.
You're offending our Houston
you
audience.
really are.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then the biggest. So then John, in fact, again was our champion twice because he was friends with Tony Thomas, who was Danny Thomas's son.
Okay.
From I can't remember how they knew each other. John had done Centennial. John had with that, so he the Yellow Rose. These were miniseries and kind of adaptations of James Michener. And he recommended us to this new show called Beauty and the Beast, which was starring Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman. And also, one of our fellow writers was George R.R. Martin, whom I'm still friends with.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you are still friends with him?
Yeah. In fact, we're having lunch next week at the Smokehouse.
Okay, I won't just show up. I don't know.
No, you won't.
Yeah, which day? So Adam can just randomly be there.
I'll tell you.
Okay, so that is...
Take a look.
You know what? Yeah, don't tell the audience when it is, because then they'll be...
No, I won't. I wouldn't do that to George.
You're going to have some random intern be like, I want to write for you.
It's very funny being with George now. And I mean, the guy, it is like walking around with Jesus Christ.
Of course.
It's nuts. And he's just the greatest.
Why? What? I don't know him.
He created Game of Thrones.
Oh, so I didn't watch Game of Thrones.
And he's very, you would, if you knew what he looked like, he's just
He's a very recognizable.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Does he have hair? A lot of hair?
A lot of facial hair, very gray.
He is, yes. He's a very distinct looking guy with his cap. But he's a longshoreman son from New Jersey. So he always kept that, working class sensibility.
Do you have like a group of writer friends that you knew back in the 80s that you guys still are all close with?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this group of, we have a group called the IJC, which was, again, because everyone's a comedy writer, it's code for the International Jewish Conspiracy, but it's actually what we call ourselves, the Ideal Jews Company. So it's kind of an excuse.
Nice.
It was it's actually an investment. It was an excuse to get together. It used to be monthly, then it was quarterly, then it was every other, then it was once a year.
Yeah.
Now it's sort of moribund, but we would have a big event at the end of every year. So yes, there's a group of writers who I started with, most of whom are now no longer in the business. I mean, it is I noticed even at the Golden Globes, I felt particularly old.
Did you?
I did.
You just felt like your generation's kind of aging out.
Yeah, very much so.
Interesting. Yeah, you were just at the Golden Globes, and we're going to get like more present, but I'm dying to know how you went from, how you got on like 24.
Yeah, like
that was
24
probably your biggest. Beauty and the
24
Beast was
kind.
big.
Yeah, and then I did X-Files for 4.
Oh, that's right.
For 4 years as well. In fact, I just saw at the Golden Globes, I saw Vince Gilligan.
Oh, wow.
And I loved, because I love Pluribus too. I think, and
we just watched that too.
I'm such a fan of his, just both as a person and as a writer.
I do remember. I have another story.
Was he on the show?
I remember.
No.
Well, so when I was working at Sony Pictures, when I was a coordinator.
Oh, you're the one who told me about it.
I remember this. I'm like, I read this script, Howard. You told me you know Vince. You gotta read the script.
Yeah,
and I went over to his house and I brought over Breaking Bad. This was the pilot script. So Sony Pictures did
heavily watermarked,
right, and Sony Pictures did Breaking Bad, and I had the script before it ever was shot. Anything. I'm like, please just read the script. It's going to be, it is unbelievable, and that's how because I knew you were friends with them.
Yeah.
And you didn't work on Breaking Bad, though?
I didn't work, but I worked on X-Files with Vince.
With Vince.
Yeah.
Wow, so okay, so you had somewhat of an eye.
Yeah, of course I did. I should have stayed in that industry. But as Howard just said, it's very difficult.
No, it's such a
Very
horrible,
difficult.
horribly hard industry.
And as hard as it has always been, and I made it sound easy, but it's gotten a lot harder.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So you're still friend. You said the IJC, which is funny. You know, obviously the podcast is just you and me. Were you always like really a strong Jew? Do you always feel like
Yeah.
connected to being Jewish since you were a kid?
I always identified very, again, I brought up a pretty secular reform, went to a reform synagogue but I always had, I would say that it's unfortunate and unfortunately is today more, germane than I ever imagined it could be or would be. But, very, very aware of the recent memory of the Holocaust, of anti-Semitism in general, and always have been a student of history and kind of how Jews in history too have been, not just Jewish history or Jews in history, but history itself, which Western civilization is filled with stories of Jewish expulsions,
Yep.
achievements, but also, uh, it's the joke is a little too close to the truth.
Yeah.
They tried to kill us, they didn't, and we went and we ate.
So
Yeah.
where does, I guess, your faith or your connection to Judaism come out in your writing? Like, how do you use that to kind of?
Well,
to
I'll
be
give you
part
an
of it?
example. But let's say two separate things, because my Jewish identity is it's not a fixed thing. It's and I remember my daughter, whom I at one point said something to me like, in my life, if my life is a puzzle, I don't know, the Jewish piece doesn't fit. She was very, Arla was
Really?
was very, yeah.
At what age?
She's like 11.
Oh wow. Okay, so it was very young. Okay.
She's very, very young. And I said, look, Arlo, I don't know what it is either. I can't, all I can tell you is this, that I'd like to think of it as I've been admitted into this garden. It's a big old overgrown garden. I can't even see the fences. Plants are everywhere. And this is like a 3,000-year-old garden that I'm in. And I said, I can't even see sometimes a foot in front of me, but I like being here. I like being in this thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it would be a shame, and I would feel like something very deep was lost if that garden died on my watch. Like, I feel stewardship for that garden. Whatever that thing called being Jewish is, it is meaningful to me. And I can't always describe why. I will tell you, though, there are some very more articulate and smarter people than me who have observed that Jews as outsider insiders, as we our otherness is in a way the perspective that a writer needs to have when you write
Okay.
something. I mean, you are, and at some level, you have to. I mean, my own process. I think any writer has an empathy toward every character. There's nobody wakes up and says, I'm a bad guy. I think so it is a kind of exercise in empathy. And there's a Talmudic tradition of debate, of storytelling. I mean, that's, so these are traditions that absolutely inform, me as a writer. My brothers, as I said, are quants. They're doctors.
Right.
They don't have that attachment to storytelling that the same one I do, but it certainly informs my my writing. And even I was saying more recently, you missed a show that I did that I actually described as a Talmudic kind of fable. It was called Accused. I did 2 seasons of it on Fox.
Who was in that?
No, well, it was
Anthology.
It was an anthology, so it had a different cast every week. Michael Chiklis, Whitney Cummings, Felicity Huffman, and Bill Macy did an episode. Malcolm Jamal Warner, who passed, who was really amazing. We had some great episodes, and they were all one-offs. But it was really about finding moments in it was every time there was, I don't know, somebody on trial, and you go back and forth in time, and you realize why that person, what happened, and
it sounds like up my alley.
It really, I was very, very proud of it, and I was super disappointed that it didn't get the kind of traction. It was well received, but not a
far
popular
from a hit.
And it was on Fox and Hulu. Yeah.
Interesting. So you were raised Jewish, though. You were raised, and then you said your daughter had this experience. And this is so interesting because we're parents. Our kids are similar in age. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. But they both go to Jewish school.
Hmm.
And it was kind of not intentional that we did that, but we've talked about this so much on the show about how to maintain like kids having that kind of association with being, well, I think if you're Jewish and you care about Judaism and Israel, etc., like you kind of want your kids to also. Did you send your kids to Jewish school? Did you do
No, but
anything
they went
like
to
that?
Hebrew school and they were
Uh-huh.
bar mitzvahed, and um, you know, and we light the candles. I mean, we do. We've always been articulate about this is our identity, but again, in a not in a overly doctrinaire. I
Sure.
envy the more closed community, or the I would say the more traditional communities. Like I would say, I wish I was brought back Persian, because I
Yeah.
envy that Shabbat is a non-negotiable thing.
Every Friday.
And I envy that, and it's so clear that that's been lost, and so the fact that we would light candles and the kids would go and visit their friends was maybe not embracing the essence of what Shabbat was meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes and
But
no,
but
but
but it was something.
the idea of still, as your family coming together, lighting the candles, there's still something very special about that. And I know as your kids get older, as you have older kids,
Now my daughter, who just had a Shabbat dinner that she hosted for friends.
Oh,
right. So
nice.
that's
So
How old is
so
she now?
you're doing it right.
29, almost 30.
Wow.
You're doing it right when it comes to
Yeah, I'm
that
very.
type of tradition.
Yeah, and again, as we can talk about it, but clearly we're seeing a schism of sorts in
Yep.
the Jewish community, often along generational lines,
Hmm.
which is heartbreaking. But I guess the silver lining of it is that our strength is kind of our dialectic, is always finding, two Jews, 10, whatever. What is it? One Jew, two opinions, 10. I don't know,
Right, right.
I mean, this dialectic is part of what I think has made us strong. It's also what's divided us and made us weak
Yeah.
at various times historically.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting now because with your children, right? So your children are older, but you do have one child. I believe he's still in college.
Correct.
And our children are young enough where they're still under our roofs, and we can, still have our Jewish traditions and whatnot. I am interested to understand where he is in kind of that identity.
He's arguably I would say he's got the most Yiddishkeit of the three, although that's really the two older ones probably won't love hearing that, but his identity is, and part of it is October 7th, is part of it was forged. And I have to say, even the older two have also, um, I'd say, taken more seriously or recognized that the luxury of being a Jew, what we thought the luxury of it being something that's optional, or that that's not existential or potentially catastrophic, or really, I would talk about anti-Semitism, and I think the kids thought, oh, you're just quaint, you're paranoid.
Mhm.
I think now I think they
Okay.
both recognize something very real and very insidious is afoot. And, it's always been thus. It just, anti-Semitism is a light sleeper.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think they've come to recognize it. But my youngest he's actually in Buenos Aires now,
Studying abroad.
studying abroad.
Cool.
Nice.
But and he goes to Vanderbilt, which I think has done a particularly good job
At
of
curtailing all that.
curtailing.
The South.
And again, and it's
Yep.
interesting because I was in UAE about a month ago.
Oh, why?
I was part of an LA delegation that was meant to go about a year ago, and then the fires happened, so it got postponed. And it wasn't an entertainment related thing. It was really just it was an LA delegation across many sectors.
Oh, cool.
Um, but my point is that even when we said curtailing, I thought UAE is a place, where there are, I don't know how many nationalities of people who are not Emiratis, but who are, you know, um, live there and are residents. And they have a very strict policy. You could say it's a police state on one hand, but there are things that are just not said.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
and there's a very bright red line drawn in terms of civil discourse, and when that's violated, the rules are enforced. And I think the universities, I think there's a much simpler way through it, than has been taken. Whatever it is, whether it's naivete, whether it's anti-Semitism, whether it's some combination of all the above, I think that there has been just this, freedom of speech. Free speech is, as we all know, a very flexible word,
Yeah.
like anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
It can mean it's an easy thing to waive free speech and say you're violating my free speech, but there's also, you know, uh, um, uh, I think that there's no one is saying stifle any voices. No one is saying, but there has to be a line
Of
somewhere, and
course.
that
Right.
line has to. It just seems very simple that when you're interfering with people's safety, their mental well-being, that's a violation, or their education, which is what they're there for.
Yeah.
That seems like a kind of no-brainer to me. And I don't know. I feel like it's been an abnegation of leadership,
Yep.
Hmm.
Without a question.
and that again, we could talk about the correctives that the Trump administration has put in place. And I'm not, what happens inevitably when I mention this didn't happen out of the blue. I'll have friends who say, you're making some moral equivalency, and I don't
Mhm.
think that's the case. I think that you have to look at the whole thing holistically. That I'm not saying that this is a corrective that is justifiable or good. I'm just saying that we need to go back to a time, or get as close as we can once again to feeling that everyone is safe, everyone has an opportunity to speak their minds, to protest when they want, but to do it within the commons and in a way that doesn't
And
disrupt the basic mission of a university, for
Right.
instance.
what really freaked me out more than anything was seeing the videos from, I mean, of course, Columbia was crazy, but UCLA, when they were
You're
not
blocking,
letting the kids
yeah,
into the
yeah.
library. And I thought to myself, this is out of control. Or when they were all holding themselves in the building and yelling at all the kids outside. Like, I can't remember which school that was, but that was so eye-opening
Cooper
to me.
Union, I think.
Yes, yeah. It was so eye-opening to me because as Jews, well, I mean, look, we've seen, all of us, the change in the last 3 years, 4 years, whatever, since October 7th, whenever that was.
2.5.
2.5
Yeah.
years. It was like that, in my opinion, because
Yeah.
I grew up here in LA. I mean, I went to school in Beverly Hills, so I was
Yeah.
surrounded by
We're
Jews.
in a bubble in Los Angeles, and just kind of
In a
this.
bubble,
Yes.
exactly. And then I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I wasn't friends with a lot of Jews, but I never, ever questioned telling people I was Jewish. I mean,
Right.
it was never I never felt scared to tell anyone I was Jewish my whole life
Right.
until October 7th.
Yeah. But now, and there was, I think at the very beginning, right after October 7th happened, a lot of us had this fear about that, about saying that we were Jewish. And even to a point where, there's always, not always, but like at the very beginning, like when that first month, where even my wife Lauren was like, do we take down our mezuzah? Do we do something
Mm.
like that? And then, when she says something like that, I know she didn't want to, but she understands trying to keep our kids safe. Then things turn on in your head. You're like, you know what? Fuck
No.
that.
Right.
Fuck that.
Mhm.
Because there has to be
A line.
a line, and and I'm proud to be a Jew. And like, you wear your Magen David all the time, and I got a tattoo of
Do you
Magen
just walk
David.
around like this?
Yes, with my
And then people think you're doing an Elon something, Elon
yes,
Musk?
yes, of course. My
Yeah.
pale
I
non-muscular
didn't know that,
arm.
Adam. When'd you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
that?
I got it I guess a year ago.
Wow.
Yes, almost a year ago.
Yeah, I remember it was during we were doing the show that
Yes,
week.
it was kind of right in the beginning. So, like, now it's one of these things where it's like I want to. I don't need to scream it from the rooftops. I mean, look at me. I already look Jewish enough.
Yeah, no
People
one
know when I
questions
walk
it.
into a
No
room.
one
I
questions
go to
the
the gym.
purebred over
No,
here.
it's fine. I am a purebred. But I don't want to be afraid of saying it.
Yeah.
Your son in college, though, was he scared? Did he go through a moment where he was like, "Do I want to be like a proud Jew, or the
No,
Zionist thing?"
he
Or
actually was um uh very proud, very, very defiant about being. He wasn't going to be cowed,
yeah,
Got it.
and that's his personality. And I'm really grateful for that. But what's painful, and that doesn't, and whatever posture he may take, what's painful is just it does get to them, and it's painful. It's painful to be hated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's painful. I mean, none of us can escape. Now, we can be defiant in the face of it. We can be angry. We can pretend, and we can talk about Jewish joy. And I think that's a real strategy. At the same time, it hurts to see yourself being sort of, first of all, even the idea that anytime anybody is grouped, whether one black person speaks for all black people or one Jew is all Jews. But when they say Jews, in fact, I was just asked at this journalist thing, what do you think about the Jews control Hollywood?
Ugh.
Even just, and I said, I hate kind of everything about those 3 words. That entire sentence
Right.
offends me. And I'll tell you why. First of all, Jews, there's lots of Jews. I mean, and not every Jew is, the idea that Jews control Hollywood already describes that there's some kind of, one hive Jewish mind, and we all are getting the memo.
Yeah.
And, so that even because the word control and then influence is one word, but control, which is maybe at the end of the continuum of influence, but there's a universe between those two things. Yes, are there a lot of Jews in Hollywood? Yeah, well, they created it. We created
Yep.
it for reasons we can talk about, as part of that tradition of storytelling. It's part of the, being forbidden from every other thing. So Jews became magicians and singers and entertainers because that was something you didn't, if you were good, people would throw a coin your way.
Yeah.
So vaudeville happens. And so all those things happen. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors why and Jews were, industrious. Again, that's a guilty as charged. But then, to say Jews control, so, there are a lot of Jews in Hollywood. They are and have been historically overrepresented given their numbers for reasons that, again, we can discuss. But that overrepresentation and that influence is, again, very different from control, because control also implies that there's
It's
some kind
negative.
of, well, it is. It's absolutely negative. And it also implies that there's an agenda that's being promoted. And I would argue if there's any agenda, and it's ironic that Jews have become kind of this, monolithized. I don't know,
Uh-huh.
Monolithic.
made monolithic as a villain in a certain narrative now, is that so many progressive causes, from interracial marriage to the acceptance of gays, have been arguably, midwifed by Jewish writers or by Jewish. So it's almost, again, the amazing elasticity of anti-Semitism is that, again, you can be the uber capitalist or the uber communist or the socialist. Like you're either, you're guilty of either being, too far to the right or being midwives to Jews will not replace us, letting the immigrant hordes in because we defend civil rights. So you can't kind of win. And so the question is, in that calculus, the fact that we can be, the object of such loathing by the likes of, or such, code switching by some of the, podcasters we know.
Yeah.
And on the left at the same time is just kind of testament to the flexibility of anti-Semitism and the sort of imagination. I mean, it's a very imaginative and unique hate among the hatreds.
Big time.
You see, I love what you did there, because this is what's so great about you being a writer, is you understand language. And when people say, like that question, what do you think about the Jews controlling Hollywood? Now, not a lot of people will be able to take that apart and understand that words mean something,
Yeah.
and how words are very
That are
important.
dashed off very easily off of certain people's tongues.
100%.
And not
But
really the damage. Yeah.
the way you dissect it is a way a lot of people can't.
Right.
And I think, being a writer, I think a lot of that, and just being a smart person in general, I think it was great the way you.
Well, by the way, I didn't get to the third word, Hollywood, which
Yeah.
is the original.
Yes.
Hollywood has changed.
Yeah.
So there's kind of the idea of what Hollywood represented for all those years. We talked about it is not. I mean, who controls Hollywood is frankly Silicon Valley controls Hollywood. Let's just be honest. So that's who controls Hollywood right now.
So speaking of Hollywood, I want to get into the alliance or organization that you kind of that you're working with part of and put together. And I'd love you to go into it. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head.
Well,
Jews
it's called the Jewish Entertainment Alliance.
Yeah.
So how did that
It's
come
very
to
new.
be? And where was the kind of the genesis of it? And who were you working with?
The genesis was in the wake of October 7th. The Writers Guild was conspicuously silent.
Yep.
and this was again well before any, as you know, again we could really. I won't get stuck in the weeds. It was the silence was deafening. Now the other guilds, the Actors Guild and the Producers Guild and the Directors Guild, made you know statements of some sort of solidarity, expressing their solidarity at the tragedy of the loss of what had happened in Israel on October 7th. So in October 8th, 9th territory, those statements were made, and the silence from the guild aroused a lot of some discomfort from a bunch of Jewish writers who kind of started talking and saying what's going on, and it became the silence. Then it's again, and the responses are it's complicated. There are a lot of this didn't happen out of nowhere, which were separate and apart from, and so it became its own kind of suddenly. The Jews who control Hollywood were now giving the Writers Guild a bunch of grief for not, and it became again almost this one of these self-fulfilling prophecies where um, uh, it became an issue, and then it became are we supporting now these people are now supporting genocide when that entered. I mean, so it just was like it was such a confluence or a clusterfuck is all I could say.
Yeah.
But what it did is it made very clear to us that this institution, the Writers Guild, in which we'd put so much a lot of us had put so much faith in terms of representing us. And again, no one was asking them to wade into the tragedy, and it doesn't, and why it would preclude the disaster of Gaza and the loss of life there, but this inability to sort of deal with something that was going on, as we all have described, and that's something that's going on. We learn through anecdotal kind of just through these forums and these Writers Guild and these conversations, mostly informal, but kind of like it became formal, which is that a lot of us who were in the wake of this were kind of feeling this wave, this October 8th Jew wave of hatred, and realizing that it had also kind of invaded certain quarters of the business. One of the good examples was the museum, the Academy Museum.
Yep.
Where, it was a museum. Let's just be honest. The Academy is just basically a marketing. I mean, it's the Academy Awards. I mean, that's like this is not the Nobel Prize, and even the Nobel Prize is the Nobel Prize.
Right. They're not.
So let's just look at the context of this is a fine organization, the Academy, who took over the May Company and made a museum and raised about $800 million, whatever they raised. I wasn't involved in it, but when it opened 3 and something years ago, there was this conspicuous void. Like there were LGBTQ filmmakers and groundbreaking people of color and Native American. I mean, it was like every
minority,
every again, as it should be, because it is a celebration of it. But from this celebration, there was one group that were conspicuously not invited to the party, which were Jews. Which so it was it was noted. This happened. This is pre-October 7th too, but it was so. It makes one ask, why is this? Why the questions again, as a minority, as a hated minority, an often hated minority or discriminated against minority. But again, one with exceptions. This is a big asterisk because again, and again, we can what anti-Semitism is and how it works is a longer conversation. The conflation with Zionism, with anti-Zionism, I just don't think it's a profitable thing. To sort of we can talk about it, but at the end of the day, something that was really about erasure. Or about at worst erasure. Oh no, I would say at best erasure, and at worst maligning a group of people. So when they did the corrective, when those vocal, Jews and non-Jews said we were the Jews in this museum, they began work on a corrective, and the corrective was conspicuously and tonally out of sync with the rest of the museum's celebration.
Wow.
And this is just a good example of like one just thinks to oneself, if this is how, whether it's the erasure from the history of the business or the framing of the business as a, again, the founding fathers, the moguls who started all the studios were misogynists, womanizers, racists, and a cabal of controlling. And again, this was like this was not a full-throated celebration of these immigrants, and they were not. They were far from perfect human beings, as we all are. But if we're going to be reductive, and if this is going to be a marketing campaign, then is the place for a thorough historical examination a museum celebrating the cinema arts, or is that for another museum
Right.
or another book? And anyway, it was very complicated, but the vigilance that it's required has been animating, and I think important, but also frustrating, because having to explain what you're feeling to those people, sometimes fellow Jews, but mostly non-Jews,
Yep.
is a very hard thing. And I have to
Incredibly.
say, my non-Jewish friends who sort of saw, again, with whom I've often spoken about being Jewish or anti-Semitism, and I think there was always this head cocked, and Howard's a little paranoid, or Howard's got a chip on his shoulder.
Mm.
I think what I've appreciated about some of my non-Jewish friends, some, has been that they may not even have recognized the trauma that was rekindled by this moment, but they saw something in me that had changed. And I think, if nothing else, if I was like the canary in the coal mine for their awareness that, wow, Howard's really, something is different
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah.
And I've said to them over the years, thank you, because I while you didn't quite get it, I felt your compassion or your sympathy for my pain, what I was going through.
It's been such an eye-opening thing about how people think about Jews. We never had that conversation in life. Like, I never had that conversation with people of how do you view Jews in
Right,
general? And to my face, a lot of them can say, I love Jews. What do
Right.
you mean? I love Jews.
right,
And meanwhile, they're listening to Candace Owens every day,
right.
and they're questioning, Trump's policies on anti-Semitism, free speech on campuses, and they're thinking, why are you? What about maybe the Palestinians are scared to walk around? It's like they're questioning everything. But I love Jews. What do you mean? I
Right,
love Jews.
right.
I was getting a lot of that from some of my
Well, the whataboutism kind of, is it,
Always.
what about?
right.
And it was a very big divide. I'm sure you felt this too. I'm curious how this changed, how October 7th changed relationships for you in the industry.
Well, I will tell you, it's enhanced some.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I've gotten, and it's interesting, out of this clutch of people. And by the way, not every Jew was animated in the same way,
Of
Right.
course.
as we
I
know.
mean, we
And
see
one
that.
one of the, and it's funny because one of the shields for the institutional shields are, well, some of our Jewish board members were against, so it is the shill, and not even the shill, and it even respects the divergence of opinions. And if people choose not to, um, that's why we have to be so careful about language and its specificity and what it means. But
Yes.
when the ask was merely to express solidarity with the tragedy of what happened on October 7th, the death of innocent people of any stripe and of any affiliation, and the sudden need to contextualize it, a tragedy, and why, this is again the unique canard of being a Jew. And so it changed it changed my relationship with some people who, and again, I do feel like I feel like I engage, maybe I'm an oversharer perhaps with people, so I'm very open, like, I'll acknowledge a silence, I'll acknowledge, you didn't mention anything, but in case you're wondering, I'm in pain.
Yeah. You'll say that.
Yeah,
You really
yeah,
interesting.
Most people just stay quiet and just like, oh, I'm going to clock that. But they
yeah.
don't bring it up.
I wanted to bring it up with everybody, and again, you have to know, in some quarters, yeah, I think one has to read the room.
What's the reaction you get when you say that? I mean, that's interesting to me because I don't think I've ever
I've
done
gotten,
that.
everything from, I'm sorry, it must be hard, but,
Yeah.
Mhm.
or, I'm sometimes I'll give you an example. Like in the very beginning of this organization of this endeavor to go. Wait a second. People are either at worst their hatred has been kindled or given an excuse to come out at again, or they're so stunningly ignorant of
Yeah.
what the Jewish experience is or how different it is from their perception of it. The idea of you people, you guys are doing just fine. If one looks at the social justice North Star, it is to achieve equity of outcome or quality of outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is to legislate who are the people in positions of power sitting in those, who's behind the camera, who's in front of the camera, what does representation look like? These are fair questions, and they're noble ones. And admittedly, where, I mean, talk about the patriarchy. Is it white men of Jewish, Christian, Muslim,
Right.
or is it, we can divide things
Into different
into different things that we can
segments, yeah.
balkanize our experience, and we can call this America this massive patriarchy that has oppressed every person and blah blah blah. Or and again, I don't want to. I say blah blah blah. I'm not discounting the validity and the and the to look critically at our own history.
Yeah, of course.
And one could argue that we've done a pretty good job through laws, through reform, and why the fact that if you believe Dr. King that the arc of history bends toward justice, then we do through fits and starts, but we're going in the direction. Why do we burn down a system that actually is capable of reforming itself through the law, through politics, through so I lost my thought, but I was trying to say get me
About
back.
about friendships, about
Friendships,
relationships, about asking
relationships,
people straight up.
having to
Basically
Bring
say
it up
that
to
you're
people.
hurting.
bring it up to people. Yeah. I'm missing my point.
Well,
Oh,
let
well, it
yeah.
was just, yeah. I mean, that's really it. That you people are doing just fine. So Jews, because they appear, again, I can't quantify. There are apparently,
Successful.
yeah, but apparently there's like 20 or 30% of Jews who live below the poverty line.
Of
But of
course.
course, so Jews are like
I
everyone
think that's
else,
us.
only more
I
so.
think we're fine.
Well,
Okay.
well, but again, this is like this idea of a cabal, and every
Right.
is a very convenient immunization to acknowledging
Well, I mean,
the
you
story.
even said that when you were raised, everyone in your area, every kid that you knew was either going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like Jewish families, for the most part, of course, that's a generalization, tend to raise.
Well, I didn't know Wall Street. That's right. That was a part that just wasn't in my. We were
Right.
teachers. We were not that. We're not the business people.
Finance side.
We're not the finance
But
side.
we pushed our kids from all the generations to work hard,
Right.
to hustle,
To
to
go to
try to.
school and then to go to more school and to continue
go to
that
more school.
education. And,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
because
that's what
my
it was.
grandfather also came from. He was a survivor and came to America with nothing, and
Right.
when he died, he
Right.
had a good, amount of success.
Right.
So it was ingrained in us, and of course that means that most Jews, I would say the majority of Jewish people that I know are at least in jobs. They have jobs. They create family.
I met a Jain, not a Jain, a Sikh
Okay.
in Madrid recently. He's has a fruit store, and a very good one, by the way.
Oh,
But
good to know.
But he was so proud. He gave me this history, and I'm a student of. I just love people, but also of culture and history
Okay.
and comparative religion. And I sort of knew enough about Sikhs in India as a discriminated against minority to have a conversation with him. But he proceeded to say just what you're saying about Sikhs. You'll never find a Sikh on the street, homeless or asking for money.
Yeah.
That he said it with tremendous pride that sometimes the byproduct of being a beleaguered or group is that you really know that there's nobody out there who's going to help you or even listen to your grievance, so you better just get off your ass and do it.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
that orientation and that resilience has been, I would say, an element of Jewish strength or of Jewish resilience. But again, it doesn't diminish the trauma, and it doesn't diminish the pain, and it doesn't diminish the feeling of feeling how we feel.
So this alliance that you're doing right now that you've started, you're
Well,
part
yeah,
of the
and I'm really one of many, many people that
Okay.
we did it under the aegis of the Federation,
Oh, the Jewish Federation. That's right.
Jewish Federation, and so so we didn't have to do the whole, our own.
You have to do all the paperwork.
Yeah, do the paperwork.
LC or
We sort of came kind of like a SPAC or kind of like but also there were great leverages and great way to jumpstart the mission, and we hired an executive director, Molina Saval. And it's all still very new, and we're figuring out the relationship. But it really is to be what part of what came out of this was a commit. At the guilds, a Jewish committee at the Writers Guild was one of the one of the things that came out of it. Like, again, the idea that in the world of there was a black and an East Indian, and there were all these groups, subgroups inside the Writers Guild, but Jews never kind of felt the need necessarily, and clearly from other people's perspective, well, what do you mean a Jewish committee and the
Right.
Writers Guild? Isn't that what the Writers Guild is?
that is the writer.
But
Yeah.
it's not, is what it turns
Right.
out. It's so not.
hmm
Just numerically, again, are we overrepresented to our demography? Sure, but and again, maybe even once upon a time, it was even more informed by Jews. But the Guild is a very big place. Hollywood, again, as I said, isn't Hollywood anymore. Hollywood used to be this. It was like Detroit. They made cars and they imported them to the world. Hollywood told stories and imported them. Now
It's everywhere.
everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
the culture is global, and they're making great shows in Sweden and in Turkey and in Israel and
Yeah.
in South Korea. They're making great content, in many ways better than the shows we're doing here.
Yeah.
So again, Hollywood is no longer Hollywood. Hollywood is a kind of it still is, but it's not. It's a shadow of its former self, and the monopoly it had on culture is gone.
Yeah.
Well, my daughter, Lincoln, who is a gigantic fan of Zootopia and Zootopia 2, was very excited to hear that you are now involved with Jennifer Goodwin because she is the main voice of that movie. So of those movies. So she was very excited to
Well, she's
see.
been so active and
Yeah.
loud
My
about
daughter?
your daughter
Yes.
about being Jewish and
Yeah.
being a proud Zionist. Well, I don't know. I'm assuming
I don't
she's
actually. I don't know.
I actually don't
I
either.
didn't. Really, this is the focal point of this. Is really, again, this is a really interesting thing because, and even inside, it's interesting because it was called IFA at one point, which was the Entertainment Alliance to Fight Anti-Semitism.
Hmm.
But there was something about it that ultimately we agreed, again, if language matters,
Yep.
emphasizing or just putting all our eggs in that thing. So it's really about the frankly multivalent challenge and the issues that Jewish creatives are facing
Yeah.
in either small ways, in big ways, in coded ways, in writers' rooms. You'd be surprised to hear that, like, I've been the only Jew in many writers' rooms,
That is
which
shocking.
which again tells you, maybe it's not just this, Jewish monopoly, but
Definitely not
um,
anymore. I mean, I think that it's definitely shifted probably in the last.
yeah, just the demographic has shifted, like
Yeah.
the population in America
Yep.
shifted, and that's part of what makes it vibrant. And I think, again, there have been many good things about the 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 awareness. I won't use the word woke. Again, everything is sort of a third rail, but for lack of a better word, I think there are things that I recognize I didn't realize how parochial I thought, oh, I know what it's like to be, I know it's tough to be black in America. I know what it's like to be a woman. Well, it turns out I don't.
Mm.
And I guess that humility, or that lack of self, yeah, I'm progressive. I'm fair-minded. Well, I appreciated that as part of this new moment. Then it metastasized into something else. And that is when I feel like that's when somebody has to cry foul.
Yeah.
Well, Howard, I think we could talk all day. I wish we could talk all day. But I do think we have to wrap things up.
Did you like plan that? Was that like a Howard Stern? I wish we could talk all day.
No, no. That
You're
was
a
just
Howard
out of
Stern
my.
fan.
I was. It's coming off the cuff. Come on.
Off the cuff. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I mean, obviously we do have to wrap things up, but in general, what is your goal for, just as a final statement, for the future of writers or Jewish entertainers in the that are Jewish in the I mean, there's no Hollywood. I don't even know what to call it.
The entertainers.
Showbiz.
Showbiz.
Showbiz. Um, just more representation, more what?
Well, yeah, I think at the very, very least, I like the idea that there's a place people can go when they feel their civil rights are being violated,
I
or
love
when they, I
that.
mean, just full stop. The simple idea that you could actually go to a Hanukkah party at the Writers Guild and have latkes with other writers, and not lower your head or be apologetic. So I think it has some salutary benefits, but I think it's also about it's navigating, I think, some very tricky waters. What I'd like to see, look, I'm an optimist. I just am. I still believe in the decency of most people. That said, I think people can turn rotten really quick. And I think
Mhm.
that, as I tell my kids, it's one person at a time and one day at a time. And you really do, keep your head up, know who you are. If you know who you are, nobody can define who you are. I think that whether you're Nelson Mandela or you're Harvey Saperstein, I don't know, mentioning, Jewish kid on the street who gets a penny thrown at his head or whatever. If you know who you are, if people can't hurt you. I
Yeah.
mean, they can kill you, sticks and stones, but if you really
Yes.
know, and I think that giving somebody the confidence and the context, I can't tell you how many emails or texts I got. People are so happy about this organization just because they have felt so lonely
Yeah.
and so isolated. So it's a way to sort of create community at some level, but it's also a way to sort of, with whatever teeth we've got left and whatever influence we've got left, to just keep this dialogue and not just cower, but to move forward.
I think it's so important, and we're so lucky now that, we can prevent, hopefully, another horrible Holocaust type of experience, because there's so many vocal people, allies,
Right,
and
and I
Jews.
hope among, again, what I would hope is that that the Jewish experience can be communicated again, whether through stories or through just direct dialogue with
Mhm.
people who just aren't conversant, any more so than I am in what it's like to be, live in Burkina Faso, or like, it's a big world out there,
Yeah,
and I don't expect everybody to understand what we all know so intimately. But if we can help communicate it and do it in a way that is civil and respectful and uh, and not too defensive and not too angry, then I think we'll have done our best.
I love that.
Yeah.
Howard, thank you so much for coming
Yes.
Oh, my
in.
pleasure.
What are you working on now?
Um, I'm working on a couple of things. I can't. None of they're
What can you
very.
tell us?
I pretty much nothing. I can tell you off
Great.
camera, but things. A couple of things are marinating, and
You're busy.
I kind of have been in and out. I've been, yeah, I sort of I was retired-ish
Yeah.
adjacent, but I'm unretired.
Can't stop.
I can't stop. Still
Well,
telling
thank you
stories.
so much,
Thank you.
Howard.
Thanks
Really
Yes.
for me.
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, we will see you next week.
Yes. Next week.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.